Welcome to the 6th episode of Heart Health series with Alan. I am Dr. Lubna Alan, founder of Alo Enlightened Women, your host for today on the topic of healthy bodies, healthy life. Through our Heart Health series online podcast, we bring you access to a health expert and we focus on a health concern that multicultural women are vulnerable to. You can start asking questions on Facebook or YouTube Live, wherever you have joined us from. In the setting of the Mental Health Month in October, we talked with expert guest Amber Hutchison, a dietitian and a researcher, who will shine light on how we can think about food and exercise differently with a cultural perspective. Diet, weight, and fitness is one of the key contributors to our mental well-being and thus a healthy life as well. The good news is this is within our power to modify. So let us introduce you to our expert guest, Amber, today. Amber has spent many years as a dietitian and are researching on women's perspective on weight, diet, and fitness, and how this is impacted by culture and multicultural backgrounds. Welcome, Amber.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. So let us start the conversation with a simple question. How does healthy bodies lead to healthy life?
Yeah, so that's a really difficult question. But firstly, I think what we need to do is define what healthy is. So the World Health Organization's definition of health is a state of complete physical, mental, social well-being. And it's not merely just the absence of disease or infirmity. But when we go down to like the medical type tract, it's all about reducing your risk factor for disease. So a healthy body is like really based on measurements, being within normal ranges, keeping your cholesterol, your blood sugar, your iron, all within normal ranges. And sitting outside those ranges can indicate whether you have a chronic disease or not. And so I was thinking about it and I thought maybe I'd add to that definition. So a body that allows you the freedom to be able to do all of the things that you want to do, but there is limitations. Women with chronic diseases or disability might not be able to do those things. So they have to incorporate how do they manage their condition to reduce symptoms and able to carry on doing what they want to do in their life. And so perhaps having a healthy body is more what you define as a healthy body. And likewise, a healthy life is the same. And so when you look at your life holistically, there are many things that contribute to a healthy body. And health can be described in many different ways. So it's not just about diet or exercise, but it's about like drinking enough water, getting enough sleep, reducing stress, socializing, having supports, freedom from harassment. It's about laughing, having beneficial relationships, and it's about how you think about your own life and how you think positively about your future. Yeah, so that's how I feel about how a healthy body can lead to a healthy life.
Excellent answer, Amber. So it's a more like a holistic view towards your life and lifestyle. So following question I have is that we've been talking about obviously, weight, diet, and fitness today. We will be. So, what do you think are some of the typical barriers or obstacles women face, especially women from multicultural backgrounds, to achieve this balance, in weight, diet, and exercise?
Mm. Yeah, so the typical barriers are definitely time, affordability, safety, and fear of judgment. Sorry. And so for multicultural women, these are the same, but like framed a little bit differently. So I was able to talk to 16 multicultural women for a study that I did when I was working at Women's Centre for Health Matters. And we talked to them about those barriers. And the one that came up over and over again was affordability. So these particular women, a lot of them were accessing the food bank at the time. So they had particular ways of, like, their particular circumstances were reflective of their lack of income. And so they had a particular way of looking at the affordability of physical activity and how they access food. And so I think what it came down to was choice. And these particular women weren't able to have choice because they didn't have that income. So they weren't able to access foods that they traditionally would eat. So one woman was telling me about, because she was accessing the food bank, she's like, well, they don't always have rice, like that's my staple. And I can't get that all the time. I have to fall back on, Western style foods, which I'm not used to cooking. And, I don't really enjoy eating, to be honest. So, yeah, it was just really interesting perspective. And when you think about affordability, also think about access. So particularly when food is linked to culture, it's really important that women are able to access food that they enjoy cooking and that they enjoy eating and has a kind of cultural perspective. And so that's where cultural markets, the food markets, are so important. And finding out all of your options in your particular area, and so that you can actually make the right choice. So in saying that, I guess where you live makes a big impact on how you access food. So I'm not saying that you should all just move closer to your food market. But when I think about my area, I live in Queanbeyan. And so, down the street is McDonald's, KFC, Hungry Jack's, Sambros, and all of these like really unhealthy junk food, which as a researcher I'd call a food swamp, in case you want the researcher term. But I'm lucky enough to have also numerous grocery stores that are a good walking distance as well. So I think it's about making sure that you have all of the things around you that you need, and which is not always easy, because like you sometimes you're stuck living in a certain place. And that's the same if with the surrounding area for physical activity. So ideally you want somewhere you can walk to the shops and walk to work and take your kids to school, and have a green area as well, which is like so good for your mental health. And better yet, if you're close to friends, then you can just drop the kids off to your friend's house while you do that physical activity. And so also, like, time, I was saying, was really important as well. Fitting in eating healthily and physical activity around a very busy schedule can be really challenging. Women are often doing like child rearing activities. They often hold the kind of to-do list, which can be a burden for women, but it also means that they prioritize that rather than their physical activity or healthy eating. And other factors contribute, like being a single parent or working a full-time job. It's very challenging. So the study also found that finding things that were suitable to their lifestyle, including socializing, is really important to connect women to physical activity as well as healthy eating. So I guess the main takeaways would be that barriers are like to maintaining physical activity and eating healthy food are affordability, access, and time. So it's important to know your options to be able to capitalize on your surrounds. They make a really big difference. And finding out all the available options that you have and finding out what works for you makes a huge difference.
Interesting, very interesting insights there from the study, because it's important that when we think about these things, we don't really think about the location. What I've picked up from your conversation here is that where we live, and access to those, if you like, the stores, healthy food areas, access to exercise area, and even access to friends, right? It can be actually an important factor in terms of balancing this weight diet and exercise. So thank you for those excellent observations. So access, affordability, location, and of course, job types, and of course, your current life situation, all that, probably makes it harder for us to do the, diet and exercise regime that we should be following to get a healthy life. So these are very good observations. Could you like to expand on how then, because this is something that you have said to me, that how can we think about diet and exercise differently from a cultural perspective? So what do you mean when you say this?
Yeah, so particularly food, like food in particular, is very cultural. So when we think about food, we often think about how families eat together, how they spend time with friends. It's a way to connect, whether it's like celebrating birthdays or religious holidays or cultural days. Food brings us together. So it's super social. So it's extremely important that it's valued. And because we often talk about food in a negative way, like with terms like it's bad, it's fattening, it's just such a contrast to to talking about it in a way that's like nourishing and good for us. So having a connection with food and kind of seeing it as more like nourishing the soul, good for your mental health, can change the way you interact with food. And so you may no longer see kind of like that fast food as real food anymore. And that can change the way you eat. So when you start valuing food, you see it as more nourishing. And likewise with physical activity, doing it in a way that makes you feel good and good about your body. It's often that in society we actually vilify women that do exercise if they don't look a certain way. So that's like a really big barrier to actually overcome. Like if you're a bigger person, then sometimes you might get harassed on the street. And women in my study told me that occurred to them, that occurred. And also like women were also worried about wearing a headscarf in a male predominant gym. So it's important that we feel comfortable when we're exercising, and doing it so that we feel good is the best way, whether it's like mentally or physically or socially. There is too much emphasis on looking a particular way. So yeah, definitely trying to make physical activity and healthy eating kind of a social activity, so it's very enjoyable. It's like should be front and center there.
Excellent. Amber, so in your findings or in your research or conversations with, dealing with people from multicultural background, did you find that a woman-only gym is something that you prefer or would like to have access to? Is that something that has come up?
Yeah, I think as we kind of go through this conversation, I'll probably say it more and more. But it's really about finding what works for you, for that individual. And I do think that having access to a gym can be good for some people, particularly if it has a creche, where they can drop off their kids and then they can work out and then like pick them back up again. And it is, it depends what affordable is to a person. So there is gyms that are $10 a week, but then across the year, that's like, yeah, it just seems a bit excessive. And there is outside gyms as well that you can access. I think with every kind of exercise style, there is always barriers. And what I would say to a woman who was asking me is like, write down all the things that you want to do, all the things that you would like to try, and give them, like, write down also the barriers to that and see if you can actually problem solve your way to actually addressing those barriers. So if it's the gym and it's about cost, maybe you can just squirrel away an extra $10 a week for that, taking it out of a different part of your budget. Or maybe, if you can't go for a walk at night, maybe there's like a way that you can do it at your lunch break. So I think women are really intuitive and they are very good problem solvers. And I think that they can use this kind of methodology, like writing down, figuring out, to kind of figure out what's actually best for them. Yeah, and it might just be their life stage as well. Like what they used to do is going to be different to, say, like for women that has had a baby. So they might have been like, a CrossFit junkie or something, and now they're going for morning walks. It's about suiting that exercise for your lifestyle and also your life stage.
Yeah. So that brings me to the next question I wanted to ask you is that what strategies that you would suggest that women follow to achieve, fitness, exercise, and a healthy life? I know that you have some interesting strategies in mind. Would you like to share with your audience, please?
Yeah. So probably one of the things that is really important is to look for good health information. And so that health information, there's just so much on the internet about physical activity and healthy eating, and it's really difficult to kind of decipher the health information, particularly, because there's like so many influencers and social media, and it is very difficult and challenging if it's in a language that is not your preferred language. So my advice is to try and find the most reputable sources of information. And the first step is to go for like the government health sources first. And then information like from community groups like other women, Women's Centre of Health Matters, even ACT Arthritis, because they can suit the information to the life stage, or I guess with ACT arthritis, they suit it to having arthritis. So you have to look for the more nuanced information for your personal circumstances. So I think, as I said before, like women are pretty intuitive, and so, but they still need that kind of trustworthy and reputable source of information. And so often, I think Julia mentioned it in her in the discussion last month, that women often from multicultural backgrounds often like prefer to access their GP for health information. And so it is really important to get a GP that you trust, but a GP that actually understands your personal circumstance and understands your cultural background, and also, if needed, can speak your preferred language. That's so important. Yeah, so that's where you go for information. It is really difficult to decipher. Yes, but I have some other strategies. So one is called time deepening. It's a bit of a strange, I guess, word, time deepening, but women do it often. So I'm just going to explain it. So it's about like putting multiple things together. So often women, so for example, going for a run with a podcast. That's a good example of time deepening. It's where you're actually utilizing both activities at the same time to get the most out of that time. And so one thing that was like present in my research is that social activities, particularly with physical activity, and like food shopping and making food, is like it's so much better when they have a friend or a family member doing it with them. So it's like that social aspect, and so you really get something more out of your physical activity, and that's one of the reasons why women often join a sport, so that they can make friends. They have like somewhere to go every week. But then, of course, there's barriers to that, so affordability and time. And but I think having something really enjoyable to do and go to actually helps motivate women to like stick with that one particular thing. If it's not enjoyable, you're not going to do it. Yeah, that's really the bottom line. So yeah, as I said before, like really trying to find out what works for you. Trying to enact healthy behaviors that you value, that like make sense to you, is really important, and trying to fit it into our life. So for example, if you work in a 4-story building, taking the stairs, it only takes 5 minutes. That kind of works for someone who's really busy. They can carve out that small amount of time to do that small amount of activity, gets their heart rate up, and yeah, they might be sweating when they get into the office, but at least they'll have done that like little bit of activity. So yeah, women just need to find out how to adapt physical activity and healthy eating to what their lifestyle is, and that might just be like trying to do some really easy things like cooking like the 30-minute meal, or bulk cooking on the weekend. Yeah, it's tough, but I believe in women, so
Yeah, women can be, I mean, if they want, they can make it, I guess. Yeah. So any other strategies that you can think of? Otherwise,
yeah, I guess I've been quite broad, and I think that's because I'm a bit hesitant to kind of like be very specific, because women are so diverse, and so like what works for me or what works for patients that I've seen in the past are not necessarily going to be what works for a particular woman. Like there's kind of the standard form, I guess I could talk about, which is like make sure you get 2 pieces of fruit, 5 serves of vegetables, not too much dairy, not too much meat. But it's just like how you actually do that is up to the individual. So for me, I like going to the fresh fruit and veg markets, but that I have a car, so I can actually drive to Fish Week to actually do that. But some women wouldn't have that opportunity. They might have to catch a bus, and that might mean getting a babysitter, and yeah, so it's really about trying to find out the specifics. And if you do need help with the specifics, go to your GP, see a dietitian. They can take like the all of your health information and really discuss and and work through that, yeah, stuff with you.
Excellent. So this is a nice segue, I think, that now we can actually move to some of the questions from the audience. So we have Luna Purification here, and I'm going to put the question on the screen. So
Okay.
she has made some comments around, thanks for this conversation. Women in most communities, especially in the cult communities, are very time poor, right? Which we have discussed earlier, I think.
Mm.
Often they play the traditional role or burden of doing most of the household work and carrying responsibilities of children and elderly parents. So it is not easy for cult women to focus more on their health and well-being with diet and exercise unless they have the support of their family, mainly their husband. So, how can communities get behind women for better health and well being? So, that's a very nice summary of what we face as a multicultural woman. So, what would you like to say to Luna and also her comment on how can the community can get behind women so for better health and well being?
Yeah, so I guess that's a really challenging question. Um, yes, so I think I have three kind of things to like unpack. One is if you if you're healthy, like if you try and make your family healthy by cooking healthy food and doing physical activity, then they can support you in being healthy. Like it's that kind of quid pro quo, you know. I guess it is challenging when your partner is not receptive of the changes you want to bring to the family. I think, yeah, I think that's very difficult, and I think that's where the time deepening thing comes in, because if you can make your time be more impactful. So, for example, your kids want to play at the park, but you want to get some physical activity, but you also want to socialize. So you bring along someone else's family's kids to play with your kids, and you do a couple of laps around the park at the same time when you're talking to your friend. So like strategies like that can perhaps work. Negotiation maybe with your partner. I think it's really challenging when you have that like significant burden as as a carer, and like when you're caring for multiple people including your partner. Yeah, trying to negotiate your time, and yeah, and if you can, bring him along for the ride, because I think that's like really worth it, like getting him healthy, you healthy, you get the time together to if you're talking or running, it's actually nice couple time as well. And perhaps that's a negotiation point as well. You can actually say, like, I really just want to spend more time with you, and doing physical activity will make us both feel good. So the community, yeah, so I guess it really depends on what community you're in and how it actually behaves. So I can see an opportunity where you advocate for like fitness activities at your local like cultural group, or you organize like cooking days with particular women in your circle, or religious kind of leaders that help everyone in the community become on board with healthy activities. I think it's a real challenge, but there is kind of ways that you can get your community on board. I hope that answered your question, maybe in like in a roundabout way.
No, it did. And I think from Alice's perspective, one point that I would add to that conversation is what we need is the mindset change. The cult community, there are certain things we haven't grown up with, understanding, doing exercise, if you like, as a regime, like, it's part of your life. So it's kind of for us, it's a mindset change that it's important to do exercise and also diet and balance the two to get to that goal that we are trying to achieve. So I would say working on that mindset is also another way of getting the community. So this is what we do, and Alo, these episodes that we run is part of that, role that we're trying to play to change mindset. So Luna has now given another comment in relation to what you just said. Thanks, Amber. I feel that sometimes the cultural mindset can get into the way too. So exactly what I was saying without reading her comment. That men don't understand the importance of women's health. They just don't want to put in the effort often. And that is what I meant. It's the mindset change, it's the prioritization. Sometimes we prioritize socialization or watching a movie over, doing an exercise or, cooking food that is more healthy than cooking more food that's more enjoyable. I guess we need to learn how to make healthy food more enjoyable, and it's also the practice, if you like. So we're learning. So that's good. Okay, so we have time for another question. It's probably a comment. So Raki Dudek has said that Medicare should cover or subsidize gym costs for certain age group or health conditions. And I think that's a very important, observation you've made. What do you think, Amber?
Yeah, I think it is. I think that Medicare doesn't really cover preventative health very well. So there is chronic care plans that your GP can put you on, where you get 5 visits from an allied health professional, and likewise there's mental health plans. But they're kind of addressing the condition that you already have rather than preventing it. In saying that, you can get visits on that on that chronic condition health plan with a what are they called? They're not PTs. They're like a personal trainer, exercise physiologist. Sorry, I was like, what is that? Exercise physiologist. So that's like one way, if you have a chronic condition, to get access to like low budget kind of health professional. Yes, but I do agree with you. I think that it definitely should be covered as as someone who believes in preventative health. It's just really important that we actually safeguard everyone from actually getting ill in the first place. So you make a good point. I'm sorry, I can't fix that.
But definitely you can advocate for it, Alo can advocate for it.
Yeah.
And I think it's an excellent suggestion there, because if we can remove those cost barriers, to joining a gym and continuing to having that access to the gym, and if Medicare support was there, at least partial support can be organized, I think it will go a long way in terms of preventative measure and reduce pressure on, if you like, the health system with chronic conditions to arise.
Yeah.
So definitely prevention is better than cure.
I think what has been beneficial about COVID is that there is more. I know it's like it is quite difficult to work out at home, but there is more YouTube videos and opportunity to actually work out at home. So that is another option, that you can actually do it in your home at a low cost, free. But then you actually have to. There is other barriers, of course, which is you might have kids running around you, or your husband is watching TV at the same time, and so figuring out what's working for you, and trying to implement that.
Thank you so much. I think we have come to sort of the end of the session. I would like to first thank you for your time, Amber, today, to help us think about food and exercise differently from a cultural perspective. Is there anything else you would like to say before we wrap up?
Just kind of like the 3 main points, I guess, which is really trying to find out what works for you. Looking at ways to add in exercise and healthy eating, but making it kind of easy and palatable and enjoyable. and also that theory about time deepening, which is like trying to fit, trying to do like physical activity or healthy eating with another person, or when you're looking after kids, like trying to utilize your time in a way that really is beneficial for you, so that, I mean, women shouldn't have to do that, like we shouldn't have to put our health on the back burner, but it happens. And so while we're looking after our amazing families and looking after our parents, we also have to look after ourselves.
Yeah, excellent. So let's wrap it up. So, what can be one positive dietary change you can make today to benefit your mental and physical well-being? This might be just to include an extra serving of vegetables with dinner tonight. Switch from white rice to brown rice or quinoa, if you want to be
Yeah,
healthy, or swap a muesli bar with a piece of fruit as a snack. So we can do little
sounds good.
things, and we
Yeah.
can take baby steps towards doing that balance and the mindset change. So thank you to our allo listeners for sharing, staying with us, and for your questions. Please spread the word to your friends, family, and colleagues. Like our Facebook page, the YouTube page, and ask another woman to join. And this video will be made available in YouTube and Facebook and on our homepage. So feel free to share it with your network as well. So until next time, this is Lubna Alam signing off from our team.
All right.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good night.